I would like to start, well, the topic of this panel is investing in sport tech, right? And I would like to start the panel by talking about why am I moderating this panel. And that's why, the reason why is because I'm the head of finance of Wayra in Telefónica. And as you may know, Wayra is a venture capital fund that we've been investing for 12 years now, more than 850 invested startups, more than 65 million in investments, euros. And recently, we joined forces with Sportboost to be able to get the best deal flow in the sport tech startups. And yes, that was the main reason. And then. Sorry, I forgot about it. Yes, so I am so lucky to be in this panel with these three, this wonderful set of panelists. We have sportists and also well-known investors. And I would like to ask you first to introduce yourself, and not only introduce yourself, but to explain to the audience how did you become an investor, also in sport tech. Maybe we can start with you, Malte.
Yeah. So my name is Malte Binting. I born and grew up in Germany, became very young age a basketball player. And at the age of 23, I had a big accident, broke my lower back, ended up in a wheelchair, had a 2.5 years rehab until I fighted my way back into pro sports. Played another season in the professional basketball league in Germany. And then decided to found a company because I learned about the technology in my rehab. It's called muscle and nerve stimulation. And I saw that these devices we are using there are quite old school. So I started a smart clothing company, basically, where we integrated electronics and electrodes into the sportswear. Grew this company with all the mistakes you can do as a founder, and sold the company in 2019 to a Swedish competitor, moved to Stockholm, joined as a chief technology officer there, built up a team of engineers and grew the company. Left the company January this year after my contract ended, and since my exit I started to investing in companies.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Adrian?
Yeah, so in my case, my life plan was always to be a professional footballer, but now I am a very happy amateur footballer, and next weekend we have a big quarterfinal game for our local team, so good luck to us. But on the academic and professional side, I mean, I learned my trade in the finance world, in the corporate world, tax structuring, so always this international private wealth management. But as I started understanding the different avenues that this could take, one became extremely clear: entrepreneurship, because it was the most exciting and interesting thing that I was personally involved in, and more so on the creative side of things. So then, being a personal sports fan, my family, we grew up playing sports all the time, as well as having an avid interest in technology. It was becoming part of my life every day as I grew up. That's the space I wanted to go into. And after having been at a startup for 5 years, where we helped business angels invest in early stage startups in Europe, I eventually moved on to venture capital, writing larger checks, which landed me at Bitcraft Ventures, which basically focuses on the vertical of video games, esports, digital media. We started out investing mostly in esports and video games, but now, and I'll go into this later on, we're starting to see how these technological advancements, innovations are affecting other aspects of life, whether that's education, whether that's normal culture, and whether that's sports. And I'll be getting into how that creates a disruptive effect later on in the panel.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff?
Pleasure to be here. I have a slightly different profile. Besides being an investor, I'm also an operator. I'm the president of Club Deportivo Leganés here in Madrid. I'm the president of Cancun Football Club in Mexico. And we also have investments in the Middle East, in Africa, and other parts of Europe, mostly in football clubs in the football industry. And my group formed 3 years ago with the hypothesis that technology, entertainment, and sports were all merging together very rapidly, and we wanted to be on the front end of that innovation. but from an operating perspective. So you could think about me as a super user. I've been in sports for 20 years as an executive, utilizing technology and analytics and innovating in various aspects and doing it through teams. And that's where we specialize. I also was CEO and chairman of a SPAC called Sports Tech. So I spent 3 years hunting for companies that were involved in sports and sports technology that wanted to go public. We ended up not consummating a transaction, like so many SPACs didn't happen, but learned a lot about the sports tech industry, and I think it's super interesting, and there's a lot of potential. There's great investment opportunities, and I think there's going to be a lot of change coming in the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Okay, thank you. So, Malte, you started your career as a basketball player, professional athlete. Then you moved to be a founder. And then right now you are a investor, right? How did experiences and knowledge you acquired as a professional basketball player helps you in your job as an investor or in the business world?
Yeah. There are many things you can learn from sports. The first thing I utilized when I founded my company was keep going. This keep going mentality was the most important thing, because when I started my sports tech company, the name sports tech wasn't even invented, right? It was super early. So that was obviously helpful in this phase. And then switching to becoming an investor was actually, or still is, a learning curve, a crazy learning curve, because I thought as a founder, I have seen everything, and I'm just switching the side of the table and just continue things, right? But actually it's much more. You need to learn so many things. And I started off as a single person, single investor, did some investments, but losing some money, was not happy with it. And then I figured out, okay, this is exactly like sports. You need a team, right? And then I met Jason and the team from Joint Capital. We became a founding team. We founded together. And now as a team, it makes much more sense, right? We have all different strengths. Jason, our CEO, he's more a finance guy coming from banking. He's checking all the background of the companies. Benjamin is doing all the analysis about markets and stuff. And I'm focusing on, hey, where can I bring in my experience as a founder? Where do I see gaps? Where can I help with business development? Maybe can I open a door to the German market? Or my specialty actually is the medtech sector, right? Is the sports tech we are talking to, is it maybe becoming a medtech in the future, right? Which is a very interesting approach. So many things. You cannot pick out only one.
Okay.
But yeah, the biggest thing is really, like in sports, you need a team. And you need different expertise to, you need to find your role and execute it very well. Okay,
thank you. So, Adrian, the motto, as you may know, the motto of this South Summit is today, 2030. By 2030, by that year, is expected the esports industry is expected to be valued at least at 4.5 billion USD. My question is, how is your strategy and your approach to capitalize this opportunity with your fund, and also about your investment thesis?
Yeah, so basically, if you look at how esports, and then I'll get into gaming later, has developed, this phrase comes to mind, which the problem with esports is that you cannot turn 15-year-olds into 35-year-olds, and now I'll explain what that means, right? So the hype of esports came around because people started seeing these stadiums, 60,000 capacity, 80,000 capacity, filled with these young teenagers in Asia and Europe and in the Americas, going crazy about these esports games, these electronic video games, right? And this was further exacerbated when COVID came, right? And everyone was staying at home. What were they doing? They were spending a hell of a lot of time playing video games, right? Now, what happened is that these are 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. They're spending their disposable power is not very great. They need to ask their parents for money, or they need to mow the lawn in order to get a bit of funding, right? So that market is still coming, right? So in the meantime, all the hype came in, and you had all these corporate sponsorships, all these branding opportunities that came, and you started to find these first esports companies that were worth $1 billion. You started having M&A transactions on their high 300 million, 400 million funds. Fast forward to today, when the markets are more depressed, the valuation is not quite there. So all these esports companies are at the moment trying to figure out how they can live up to this hyped up expectation that was created in the last 2 to 3 years. But beneath all that, which is very important, there's a wave of people that are coming to market and they're going to have a huge disposable income who, unlike me, did not grow up supporting soccer teams or supporting basketball teams, but grew up following gamers online, following esports entertainers, following content creators. And mind you, when they come to money, when they start being leaders, when they start being decision makers, esports is going to be part of their culture. So what we are doing as an investment company is obviously looking at where these markets are going to be in the next 5 to 6 years, what infrastructure plays are there, what platforms are they going to be using. And something that's very, very key, and which is the main distinguishing factor between sports and gaming and esports, is that these new technologies, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitch, whether it's Facebook, they create the environment in which these gaming companies were built, right? So when you look at how an esports like League of Legends, which is one of the most important video games and the esports in the world, is they understood the power of viewership over Twitch. They understood the power of the content creator. They understood the power of elite gamer training on these servers where you and I, who are normal people, can enter that game and play against our hero. So it's like my little pachanga on the weekend, and Messi turns up. You know, it's kind of equivalent to that. So there aren't those experiences in the traditional world, but there are these experiences in the gaming world, and we're very interested to see what technologies can enable that. So for example, I grew up in the time when YouTube was coming to market, and I was a crazy fan of Ronaldinho. I used to watch all his clips online. The truth is, today, the way I experienced that is exactly the same. So I don't feel, and maybe I'll be corrected, that the traditional sports has really learned how to tap into these unique opportunities for one-to-one or one-to-few interactions that these new platforms create. And that is the opportunity that we're tapping into. And that is where I think even sports can learn from how video games developed to become a more interesting entertainment product, not just for the 40 to 60-year-old fans, which, yes, have the higher spending money today, but what about the next generation?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving to Jeff, these last 3 years, you've been very active in terms of investment, different clubs, different countries. Could you elaborate more about this last activity you had in Blue Cloud Sports?
Sure. The amount of money and interest going into sports and sports teams is phenomenal. Lots of funds, lots of wealthy individuals, lots of groups trying to invest in sports teams. It sounds so sexy and it sounds like something that's a lot of fun to do, but every single investment you make in a team requires a lot of TLC and a lot of maintenance, and there's a lot of ways to lose money in sports and a lot of things that can go wrong. And I think when we, our hypothesis is that we want to run clubs really well. And what does that mean? It means, you know, producing results on the sporting side and producing results on the business side, and being a long-term investor in a team, not looking to flip an asset, buy low, sell high, because it doesn't really work that way. Most sports teams, at least in the world of football in Europe, lose money. And not only do you lose money, you have a chance to lose a lot of money if your team gets relegated. And so there's a lot of heartache involved. But you look at the business models and the operating models of those clubs that have been very successful, and I can name a few like Red Bull Salzburg, like Brentford, Liverpool, other clubs. There's several clubs here in Spain that have been successful. And they commit to a strategy, they stick to it, and they execute it. And I think for our clubs, our strategy is going to be about execution. On all dimensions, because to get a competitive advantage and to win, it's not just one thing. You can't just be the highest tech club or the club that runs the fastest. You have to do a lot of different things. And so you have to hire people that are good at doing these types of things, which means hiring people from non-traditional backgrounds into sports. And so I've, in my 20 years as a sports executive, I've hired more engineers than I have athletes. Because really, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're problem solving, and we're trying to optimize a result, and we're trying to do different things to get there. And then, of course, the big variable is luck, what happens on the pitch or on the court once the game starts, and you can only control so much of it. But the advance of technology and what it's done on the sporting side is incredible in the last 20 years since I got involved in the industry. The challenge for investors and providers of these technologies is that when a club sees an advantage, they want to keep it to themselves. Otherwise, it's not an advantage. So if you find a technology or you discover something that's going to help give you an edge in competition, you by definition don't want to share it with the rest of the teams in your league. And so businesses that are offering tools to sports teams have to realize that if you go sell something to the Dodgers, they're going to want to take you off the market so that you don't sell it to the Padres. And the other aspect, I think, of investing in sports and tech and other aspects related to sports is that I know everybody wants to sell to a team, a major league team or an NFL team or a Premier League team, and it's fun and sexy to be involved with these clubs that are famous, but at the end of the day, the market is only so big. There's only so many teams at these top levels, and if your product or technology or service doesn't access the weekend warrior or the mom and dad or the kids or the college and high school athletes, then your market's going to be very, very limited. So, I look at companies like Hudl, done a tremendous job. Yes, it's technology that's fundamentally changed scouting in a lot of areas, but every parent that has a kid playing high school football in the US, which is a lot, knows Hudl. And so then you start to broaden the market out a lot. And yeah, pro teams use it, but so do families, and that's where I think you can make a lot of money.
Okay, thank you. And what I wanted to say before is that the reason why Wayra and Sport was joining is because we wanted to get the best deal flow in the market in the sport tech industry, and because we really think that in the coming years we are going to see a lot of opportunities, not only in terms of new technologies, but also in terms of financial returns in this market, right? And my next question is about the future. As I said, the motto of this South Summit is today 2030. What do you think about the future in sport tech? I would like to know about your thoughts on the trends, right? And what do you think in the coming years in this industry? Maybe we can start with you, Malte.
I think, or our hypothesis is that the health of the athlete will become even more important, right? So we really like to see companies, startups that are going into this field. How can we improve the athlete health? Coming from training, analyzing movements, whatever it is, right? We are not stopping, some investors are stopping hardware, like they're saying, oh, hardware is too complicated. I think hardware is only complicated, it's like software. If you don't have it under control, it's getting complicated. But so we are looking at the complete package, and we think that this generating data, measuring more things is actually the future. We are very, very early stage when it comes to data collecting in pro sports and also amateur sports. So this is really something we want to see growing with a focus on health of athletes.
Okay.
Yeah, from my end, so you hear a lot about how these new technologies, VR, metaverse, blockchain, are going to affect sports, and they will have an impact, no doubt. But one of my favorite speakers in the sports world is Daryl Morey. He's the general manager of the Philadelphia 76ers, previously at Houston Rockets, and he's very big into big data and analyzing data that affects performance on the pitch. And one of his hotter takes, in my opinion, are how changes in rules will fundamentally disrupt sports. And now I'm going to make a link to that to gaming, so courageous me, right? But basically, think about the three-pointer line, right? So I think that was introduced in the early 90s or late 80s, right? It took about 12 years for us to get to Steph Curry, who is the player by definition, who's the expert three-point player. Before that, there were three-point specialists, but they were not as category-defining as Steph Curry was. You're the NBA expert, right? So much so that it changed the league, right? Everybody now, as much as they train drunks, they train three-point shooting, right? The NBA caught wind of that, right? And what was also happening in the meantime is that people started realizing that the way people consume sports, or their gateway into sports, is their mobile phone, right? Their Twitter highlights, their Instagram highlights, their Facebook highlights. So the NBA has tweaked the rules so that more highlights can be witnessed, admired, or found out in any given game. So changes in the rules really have a maybe subtle, but actually quite impactful change on the game. And now how do I link this to gaming, right? So again, using League of Legends, because it's the biggest example, one of the very, very interesting aspects about League of Legends is when a season finished, the publisher of the game, the creator of the game, recalibrates the game. So what does that mean? That means that if you have become an expert player with this red ninja, let's use a very simple term, all of a sudden the rules have changed. So all of a sudden, it's a blue military person that's going to be the more important character. So if you were a top-ranking player in Season 1, the truth is you might have started Season 2 already at a little bit of a handicap. And then they change certain things in the way the gameplay works, they say certain things in the way the maps work. So there's a complete reshuffling of the way kind of people prepare for the upcoming season. Now, how do you bring that to sports, right? You have these age-old traditions. You can't go and disrupt the sport so quickly. So that's where emerging sports come in. And I think there's a very interesting example in Spain, in Barcelona, and I'm sure you know it. It's the Kings League, right? So the Kings League is taking traditional sports, but it's using examples from the gaming world in terms of gamifying the game, these cards that all of a sudden change the rules. And you have a complete new way of experiencing the same sport, and it's very good for Twitch, it's very good for content creators, and it's creating interesting ownership opportunities for investment. The last point I'll make is we made an investment in a company called Karate Combat. So it's a challenger to UFC, but it's not challenging it head-on. It's full contact karate. The pointing, the scoring system works so that it enhances the fight to be very short, but very high impact. So why? So that the Twitter highlights are very spectacular. Okay. And now create an overlay on top of that where the fighting arena is not your typical boxing arena, but it's a gaming studio with a green screen, right? So when the fighters are combating, you create these fantastical 3D environments around them. So it looks really high-tech, really out-of-this-world type of combatants. And if, for example, a combatant is known as the Terminator, in the post-production, you overlay, when the guy throws a punch, you overlay the Terminator to hit that punch and create these effects. So when you're showing your friends online, hey, look at this fight, of course you gonna want to know more. And then there's some also interesting things with blockchain and tokens that are involved there. But I think the more exciting part is how can we rethink sports to adapt to the new world of technology? And that's what I think is really interesting.
Okay, thank you.
I think both of you hit on good points. Health and wellness is a huge area, and it applies not just to the elite athletes, but to all of us. And I think that technology is going to continue to evolve. I think your point is more about sports is entertainment at the end of the day. And the consumer of sports, the fan, the person that's interested, has a short attention span, and they want constant stimulus, and they want to be more involved. And I think a lot of these interesting technologies are going to come around making sports more accessible, not just when you're in the stadium, more things to do in the stadium, but also when you're outside of the stadium, how do you interact more with the team, with the players, et cetera. La Liga is doing a lot of innovative stuff, and it will do more innovative stuff in the future. And it's almost going to get to the point where you're watching a football match on TV, and you can't really separate the video game part of it from the actual experience, the soccer part of it. I love the fact that it's merging together. It's going to be interesting. We did host a Kings League game at Butarque Stadium. I got to kick a penalty. I didn't miss. He stopped it. But it's fun because my wife said, this was the most fun. The crowd was completely different. It was a younger crowd. And the game went by. Everybody was entertained. We had entertainers there. And I think those types of things are going to happen. But we have to make sure we protect the game itself, the actual competitions, because there's still a lot of purists, and the basketball and baseball and football, there's rules, and we need to watch those games. So it's an exciting time to be involved in sports, for sure.
Okay. So we have 1 minute left. I don't know if, well, maybe we can go with another one, a quick one. We all love success stories, right? And I will ask you, any of you, to elaborate a little bit on any successful story in any of your invested startups or not invested startups or technologies in your fields. I don't know who wants to jump.
Well, not yet, but Cancun FC is going to merge the entertainment experience with the sports experience. I mean, there's going to be teams that are going to do really innovative things in the future, and I think it's going to be fun to watch and participate in those.
No, it's similar for me. I think my message is one of the ways to keep the sports alive and keep the entertainment high is to allow people from different parts of technology, different parts of thinking, different parts of creativity to come together and come up with new ideas. So that's always an interesting mix and a way for new things and fun things to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm really looking forward to the next years where we can see much more things coming up and the field evolving.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you. We are on time, and thank you for coming.